Good afternoon, everyone. We're just going to give everyone another minute to join here, and we'll get started shortly. Okay, well, we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you for joining us today. Welcome, everyone, to the webinar, Overcoming LMS Data Migration Challenges and Effective Strategies for a Smooth Transition, hosted by MapleLMS. I'm Matt Peterson. I'm the Relationship Director with MapleLMS, and I work closely with our clients to partner with them on their training, continuing education, and professional development programs, and really to help them achieve their objectives around those programs. At MapleLMS, we have provided many clients with migration services of moving their existing content and data from their legacy LMS to our system. And our talented migration team has helped us prepare strategies for a successful transition from a current LMS to a new LMS. And I'm joined by my colleague Avin today, and together we'll be guiding you through how to make this transition. So nice to have you with us today, Avin. And would you like to take a minute to introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Avin. I'm a key account manager with MapleLMS, and I've worked with quite a few customers and been involved in many of those implementation processes and also onboarding processes.
Great, thank you. Before we get started, just a couple housekeeping items. We really want to encourage you to ask questions through the Q&A at the bottom of your screen, and we'll either answer them in the chat or at the end of the presentation. And we'll also be presenting a couple simple poll questions during the presentation. We appreciate your engagement and your participation in the polls. So we'll move along, and I think we're going to release our first poll. So we're just asking you where you are in your LMS migration journey. So maybe if you're exploring other options or in the planning phase, or you're actively in a migration, or you're not really considering a migration currently. So feel free to choose the option that best supports um, where you are on that journey. Thank you for everyone's participation. And we're going to move along. So I'm going to cover today's key points that we'll be going over and an overview of what we'll be covering. So we're going to be talking about the key drivers behind an LMS integration and why do organizations choose to make a change to their LMS. Next, we'll also be defining exactly what migration is. Thirdly, we'll be talking about what companies hope to achieve with an LMS data migration, and what are some of the most common goals and benefits of switching to a new LMS. We'll also be covering the data migration process, and here we'll discuss the process from the very beginning and planning to what steps to do after the migration is complete. We'll also be talking about common roadblocks and how to overcome them. Typical challenges you may face during the process and steps you can take to overcome them. We'll also be giving you a step-by-step data migration guide. So here we'll be talking about the actual execution of the migration and the nuts and bolts of what data you are moving. We also have a great process chart that our team has come up with, where we're going to show you some examples of data and how it's prepared for migration. And we'll be finishing up with some key takeaways from today's webinar. So I thought maybe we could release the poll results from the first question, and then we can move along to the next slide. So here I'm seeing where you are with your migration journey. So most of you are actively migrating to a new LMS. So I hope you'll find this information very timely. And also some are just starting to explore options and some aren't considering migration currently, but maybe this will be useful for you in the future. So we can move along to the next slide. So here, next, I wanted to talk about why organizations choose to make a change to their LMS, and what types of things typically drive this decision. A few recent statistics, though, according to a recent study by Brandon Hall, 27% of organizations are unhappy with their current LMS, and 54% of companies that have an LMS are missing the key functionality that they require. So one reason we often hear why people may be switching is outdated technology. You really want to keep your technology up with evolving learning trends and the technology associated with that. And many legacy LMS platforms were designed in a pre-cloud desktop first era and haven't really evolved to meet today's digital learning standards. So sometimes they lack mobile responsiveness, making it difficult for learners to access content on the go, maybe outdated interfaces that are unintuitive and require significant onboarding or workarounds. And I often hear limited integration capabilities. And this is a separate point, but a key driver here when we're talking about outdated technology. Many of our clients want to see integration with tools like Zoom or Microsoft Teams, third-party content libraries, business intelligence tools, and more often than not, a system of records like a CRM, an AMS, or a HR system. Organizations really need an LMS that supports these emerging technologies such as microlearning, AI-driven recommendations, content authoring tools, gamification, and we're seeing augmented reality and virtual reality incorporated into the capabilities of an LMS. Second is a poor user experience, and I often hear this. If learners and administrators are struggling to navigate the system, it'll directly impact your engagement and productivity. And common complaints that I sometimes hear from the searching for a new LMS is just the navigation is clunky, it's hard to find resources, maybe slow system performance and excessive load times, or lack of personalization or adaptive learning paths. So a modern LMS with a clean, intuitive UI and user-centered design enhances both the learner satisfaction and your administrator's efficiency, and really results in higher engagement, better learning outcomes, and fewer support requests. The third one I have noted here is scalability and flexibility. So in general, cloud-based systems offer this scalability and agility. Organizations grow and so do their learning needs, and a rigid LMS cannot easily adapt to increased user numbers, complex organizational structures, and varying delivery models, including webinars, podcasts, self-paced courses, blended courses, and instructor-led courses. So modern LMS platforms, especially those cloud-based solutions, offer the agility to scale and adapt without overhauling infrastructure or user management processes. The fourth one is improved reporting and analytics. Your decision makers want deeper insights into learning progress, your course effectiveness, and sometimes compliance also comes into this. And legacy systems often have basic or hard to customize reporting functions, making it difficult to extract meaningful insights. Today's stakeholders really expect real-time dashboards and that are customizable to make sure the information that's most important to them is at the forefront. They want customizable reports, integration with business intelligence tools, and predictive and analytic tools, or the ability to send data to these tools. The fifth one is the integration needs, which we kind of briefly talked about. Modern LMSs need to integrate with your HR systems, CRM tools, content libraries, and video platforms. And limited integration options often push organizations to seek more connected platforms. So training is really no longer siloed. It must fit into a broader digital ecosystem. And an effective LMS should be able to integrate with some of these tools that we mentioned, CRMs, HRIS, HRMS platforms, content providers like LinkedIn Learning or Coursera, web conferencing tools like Zoom or Microsoft Teams, credentialing systems, payment gateways. Seamless integrations will save staff time, streamline workflows, reduce manual data entry, and eliminate redundancies and errors, and really enhance the learner journey from onboarding to certification. The sixth item I have here is support for more remote and hybrid learning. So the shift towards remote work has increased the demand for robust, accessible, and mobile compatible learning platforms. And the post-pandemic world demands that learning be accessible anytime, anywhere, or on any device. And a modern LMS often will support mobile and tablet compatibility, offline learning options, social and collaborative learning tools, and the ability to offer asynchronous and synchronous delivery methods. The flexibility to learn remotely or in hybrid formats is now a core expectation and not a bonus feature in an LMS. Seven is oftentimes cost efficiency. High maintenance costs or limited ROI from an existing LMS can motivate a switch to a more cost-effective solution. Older LMS platforms can often carry hidden costs like high licensing or renewal fees, significant time and labor for maintenance or customizations to your platform, and the need for third-party tools to fill functionality gaps. So organizations that are looking for a cost-effective and scalable and future-proof solution, usually subscription models or SaaS-based open source options and modular platforms, offer greater value and lower total cost of ownership. And last but not least, security and compliances. So new LMSs often come with stronger security features and compliance certifications. Data privacy laws are evolving rapidly, and older platforms may not offer the encryption standards, the audit trails, and access controls, or support for global compliance frameworks like GDPR, HIPAA, FERPA, and many more. Modern LMSs are really built with security and compliance in mind, helping organizations avoid legal risks and protecting your learners' data, particularly in highly regulated industries. Next, we're going to move along and talk about exactly what is LMS migration. So LMS migration is the process of transferring all relevant data and content from one learning management system to another to ensure continuity and minimize disruption. Next, I'm going to break down what are the exact components that typically get migrated. So the first one is user data. So this will include all the information related to your learners, your instructors, your administrators, things such as usernames, emails, IDs, roles and permissions, their profile data, including maybe their job titles, their organization, their location, department, and any group or cohort assignments also come along with that. Second is your course materials and your content. So this is the heart of the LMS. It includes any of your course outlines and structures, including modules and topics, any SCORM, XAPI, or AICC packages, any PDFs, videos, slide decks, quizzes, multimedia files, any learning paths or curriculum sequences that have been created, and also discussion forums. And you may also have an entire resource library that you need to migrate. Number three is course enrollment and progress, including course completion. So this is going to capture all your current activity for each learner, all the courses they're enrolled in, the current progress in each course, and even maybe down to the module level, the completion status, attempts at assessments and quizzes. This will ensure learners don't lose their spot or have to repeat learning they've already completed. And this is especially critical if you have compliance or certification-based training. Next is historical records. So like learning history, assessment performance, certifications, credits earned, time spent on learning activities. all that can be migrated into your new system to maintain accountability, reporting accuracy, and learner credentials over time. And the last one I wanted to talk about was system settings. This is often overlooked, but this category can include important configurations, your branding, your logos, your colors, your custom themes. All those can be brought over. Any automated emails or notifications or reminders that are set up to go out. Any role-based access settings, custom workflows and triggers, and also along with that, any integration settings. So if you have a single sign-on or integration with payment gateways. So bringing over this is going to reestablish the administrative framework of your LMS so that the user experience and backend functionality remains consistent or improved post-migration. Next, I'm going to talk about what are the key benefits that can be achieved when migrating from one LMS to a new improved LMS. And the first one is modernizing learning experience. So accesses to advanced features like mobile learning, gamification, AI-powered recommendations, and in general, a more intuitive, engaging user interface for both your learners and your admins. And the outcome to this is higher learner engagement and satisfaction. Second is streamlining operations, so simplify administrative tasks through automation and better workflows, easier course creation, easier user management, and also reporting falls into this. And the outcome is reduced manual workload, operational costs, and in general, just saving staff time. Number three is improved data insights, so access to richer real-time analytics and dashboards, and better tracking of learning progress, compliance, and skill development. And this really helps make your data-driven decision-making better for your learning, education, and development strategies. Number four is enhanced compliance and certification tracking. So better tools for tracking mandatory training and generating audit-ready reports, retaining historical compliance data critical for legal and industry requirements. And the outcome is reduced compliance risk and audit readiness. Number five is scalable learning infrastructure. So support for growing teams, or maybe you're adding multiple locations or doing a global rollout, easier integration with HR systems, CRMs, AMSs, content providers, and other tools. So the outcome for this is really future-proofing your learning ecosystem to ensure that you can scale. Number six will be cost savings and efficiency. So lower maintenance or licensing costs of moving to a more cost-effective platform, and hopefully fewer support issues due to a modern, stable system. And this can directly lead to your bottom line and higher ROI on your learning technologies. And finally, number seven is business and culture alignment. LMSs better reflect current organizational goals, values, and their branding, and can support modern learning approaches that align with your organization's culture. And this leads to stronger alignment between your learning initiatives and your business objectives. I'm now going to turn it over to Avin. He's going to walk you through the entire strategic process of migrating your data, common roadblocks, and how to overcome them. So over to you, Avin.
Right, thank you, Matt. And let's just move on with the slide that we have over here. As you can see, we've laid out a few processes on this slide, and usually any organization was looking to migrate LMS data would pretty much follow the similar processes. So I'm going to start with the first item over here, and that's definitely discovery and planning. Now that's where you define your goals with the migration process or the overall migration, audit your current LMS, identify stakeholders, and essentially create a migration plan. So you need to think about what data needs to come over, what's the ideal outcome, and understand what data exists as of now. So maybe data around users, courses, completions, certifications, and much more. And also maybe involving the appropriate individuals from the organization would be helpful in this processes, such as your IT, maybe compliance, learning and development teams, and also, if possible, vendor teams. Now, once you have that in place, it's time to put together a migration plan, and a migration plan leads us to the next step, which is about data mapping and cleanup. So this involves mapping your data fields, cleaning and validating the existing data, and deciding what not to migrate. And the way this would work is you would match data from the old LMS and structure that with a new one, meaning a new LMS might have some specific data fields which are accepted, and there might be a few which may not be accepted. So you need to look at that and map your fields accordingly. Remove any duplicates, outdated, or any inaccurate records. And finally, move on to what's necessary. So have a less cluttered data, a clean, structured data that's ready for migration. With that in place, we then move on to configuring the LMS or setting up your environment where you would be migrating your data. So this involves preparing some test environment, and usually you would get that when you sign up with an LMS vendor. They will be providing you with some sort of an environment where you can import your existing data. And in this case, what I'm referring to you as configuration is to configure your data to accept configure your LMS to accept data that you currently have and maybe make any necessary changes as needed. Once you have that in place and once your test environment is ready, then you're ready to move on into a testing migration phase, which is also considered as a pilot phase or a pilot migration. Now, this process involves running a sample migration initially. So migrate maybe a small group of users and data to test compatibility and workflows. Also validating the data. So check if user records, courses, and completion status are intact and accurate. And finally, let's get some stakeholder feedback as well with this overall process. Now, that's not all. With these four items, you also have a few more steps to look at or a few more processes to look at. We'll look at the steps as well as we move on to this webinar. But here I have three more processes to consider or three more processes which are pretty common throughout any data migration process. So we talked about validating our data, setting up the environment, and and basically preparing our data that's ready to be migrated. So that's the time when you look at a full execution of your existing data migration. So migrating a full data, and first step to that would be backing up all your data. So always necessary that you back up your existing data just in case if you lose or something goes wrong. You should have a backup that's available. So that would be an item to consider in this process. And also, when we say full migration of data, that does not mean um, uh, importing or migrating the entire data all at once. So this could still go into stages. So maybe start with a small batch. Again, maybe let's just start with user accounts, then maybe progress, and similarly other data points that could be migrated in this full migration process. But we're talking about migrating your data directly into the new system since we have our data cleaned up and ready to move. Also, one thing to notice is monitoring and validation of the migration process. So that's also something to consider. And this would happen in the process when you're migrating or executing a full data migration. So you need to look at how the data is going to your new LMS. You need to verify if the data looks correct, if there are any gaps, or if anything's incorrect, and if that needs to be fixed. Now from there, we are pretty much ready to move on to a post-migration status. So maybe have some quality analysis and support. So just to ensure all the functionality and user satisfaction as well, but really to make sure that everything has been as planned, meaning the data that we migrated looks correct on after the post migration, stays intact, and that we have everything that's needed with this migration process. And finally, archiving and decommissioning. So basically, a goal to that would be to safely sunset your old LMS and preserve any legacy data. Um, and that's pretty much about archiving and decommissioning. But from here, I have a few more items to share in regards to the migration process. And most importantly, we're going to talk about some roadblocks and a few mitigation strategies that could be applied during your migration process. Now you may or may not come across some of these, but it's a pretty common these roadblocks are pretty common and that we've seen from our past experience pre-data migration. So one of the most common roadblocks would be incompatible data structures. What that means is the data that you currently have is probably not compatible with the new system, or the way your new system accepts the data is probably not matching up. And to overcome that challenge, a mitigation strategy would be to have a data mapping workshop. So maybe get together with your vendor, identify how the data looks or what kind of data sets are accepted within a LMS or with your current LMS, and also identify any data schema differences um, and have those resolved. Secondly, another roadblock is around incomplete or dirty data. Now, when we say incomplete, that means you may not have full data exported, maybe chunks or pieces of an existing data, and it's just not complete data that you need. So you need to identify that, but that's a common roadblock as well. And to come over this roadblock, one of the strategies would be to do a data audit. And this is somewhat time consuming, but clearly it's your data. So you need to audit your data, clean up any discrepancies, and then that's pretty much ready to use and ready to have it migrated into a new system. Also, let's talk about limited access to legacy data. Now, that's quite a challenge with many legacy systems. Um, and we've seen that in the past. Legacy systems are often difficult to operate when it comes to data migration. So you may not have options to export, you may not have options or to pretty much export all data, or maybe it just allows exporting some pieces of data from your legacy system. But one thing to consider with a legacy data is that you can still try to export the full data. So that means it may include things that you might not need, but definitely it would include things that might be important. And that would be a way to go. So simply export the full data, or try to find a way with your legacy system to export the entire data and then have it maybe segregated according to different types of data sets, and then make it ready to go. Lack of internal expertise. Now, that's also a challenge with many organizations. Sometimes you just don't have enough resources to manage this entire process. And maybe assigning a dedicated migration lead would be a way to go. In this case, this individual should be able to take the responsibility of the entire data migration process. But I would suggest not just one, it's usually a teamwork, and that just works great. If you have multiple individuals involved, maybe just a couple who can lead this migration process, then it still kind of makes it easier for you to migrate your existing data into a new system. Lastly, understanding the complexity. So we need to have a realistic project plan, phases and milestones when we're talking about migrating data. And this is a challenge that you may come across where you don't really understand what the complexity would be with this entire process. So clearly, building out a realistic project plan would be the way to go and would be a strategy to consider. And your plan should definitely include phases and milestones. So maybe specific deadlines with specific phases and specific milestones. And maybe some specific activities that could be included within this overall plan. But with that, we just discussed about some roadblocks and mitigation checklist. And I'm going to release a poll over here, which also relates to the similar topic that we just talking about. So you'll see a poll on your screen, and I'll just take a few seconds to let you respond. But what we would like to know is ideally what's your biggest concern when it comes to LMS data migration. So maybe just take a few seconds before we move on, and I'll release the poll results as we move on into this webinar. Also, while you're responding to the poll, let's just move on and also look at a step-by-step data migration guide. So this guide includes really three sections, and everything begins with gathering the data, so data information gathering, and an ETL process is something to consider. So extract, transform, and load that data into the new system. It's a three-step process, a standard process to ensure that you have a clean data transfer. And I'm going to show you some examples as well, since we are on this slide. A few, uh, just a second. Yeah, sorry about that. So we'll just go over what these files could look like, what an exported data could look like, and finally, an example of an imported data or the data file that might be accepted with a current LMS system. But also briefly wanted to touch upon some of these points over here. So extracting, transforming, and loading process, that's something to consider, a standard process that ensures a clean data transfer. And then course and user data migration. So that involves validating and mapping your existing data. Once you have that exported, you can just validate and map that with an acceptable format. And then performing some trial migrations would be a step in this process. And finally, confirming the accuracy of the migrated data. We've also listed a few types of data migrations that usually happen with an LMS, starting with account creation. So that's really migrating your existing user accounts into a new system. And secondly would be course enrollment. So that's migrating the current enrollment status of your learners into the new system. Course completion status, pretty common and pretty important as well. So that's basically historical records of course completions, content progress as well. And that may involve certifications that individuals have achieved, maybe assessment progress, maybe assessment scores, and with uh, with some organizations, there might be a need to migrate some additional data fields along with these common types of data sets. So maybe some generic information about the learners, maybe their company type, organization type, maybe any specific audience type, or even member, non-member status and things like that. But from here, let me also stop the poll since we have the results on our screen, and I'll also walk you through a couple of examples of what these data sets could look like. So I'm going to end the poll over here, and we can share results right away, but it looks like compatibility with the new LMS, about 25% find that as the biggest concern. And the top concern that I see, well, not a concern, I would say, but uh, the response to the poll is that we've never done a migration before. So that means you do lack some expertise in migrating the existing data. That's definitely a concern. Also, about 13% of participants find user account and permission transfer as one of the biggest concern when it comes to data migration process. So great. With that, I think let me quickly run through some examples of what these data sets could look like. I'm going to come back and just launch into some of these data sets that we've added over here. But to begin with, we are looking at a file which was exported from an existing system. So this is an LMS exported file. It includes usernames, student ID, date of joining, preferred language again. There's some information about graduation, so the date when individuals graduated. And you'll see that there are quite a few fields over here. So that means the LMS over here probably had quite a few custom fields, had some additional information or additional fields such as address of the individuals. Clearly, email IDs are needed, country and gender, age range, address type. So ideally, this is what an export could look like. It could have several data points which you may or may not need with your current system. And then what you need to look at is what the current system would accept in terms of data import. Now, when I say data import, it could be around user account imports, or it could be around maybe course status imports or enrollment status imports. And this is what a imported data or a clean data could look like. So we are only including items that are most important, starting with the usernames, authentication types. So whether it's a single sign-on based authentication for a user or maybe a username and a password. We see fields around languages and some more. But overall, this is what the difference could be between the two data sets. There are a few on this previous data set that are highlighted in red. So these are the ones that may not be needed. So you could simply highlight those, have those deleted, and then simply add your data fields over here into the newly accepted file type. But with that, I'm going to come back to our slides and let me launch into full screen mode. And we're going to look at this migration process chart real quick. So this migration process chart really lays down some steps, briefly lays down the steps involved into a migration process, starting with your current LMS. So your current LMS resides on top. You then begin exporting your existing data. Maybe a user creation file type could be an Excel, course enrollment export, and then further with the ETL process applied, we then bring it to a supported format that's acceptable within your LMS. Now, once you have that file type created, just an example that we saw earlier, we then move on to creating a CSV. Now, this over here is with MapleLMS for the reference. So MapleLMS does support a CSV import, and usually you're required to convert that or make that into a CSV and import into the system. But again, could be different with many different LMSs. But again, once we have our format ready to use, ready to import, we can then begin the import process directly in the LMS. So briefly, if we just look at it, there are just a few steps involved. As we talked about some of these steps earlier, there could be a few roadblocks, a few strategies that you can apply, and overall lead to a successful data migration process. But with that being said, I'm going to navigate back to you, Matt.
Sure, thanks, Avin. That was a great overview of the actual process, and hopefully you understand a little bit more about the nuts and bolts of this migration process. So just wanted to recap a few key points. So effective data migration really requires structured planning. So, and also I think you should think of a migration as more than just a transfer. It's really a transformation into a new system. We talked about data validation. It's crucial before and after migration. So really take the time for this. We really discussed how important this is. And I like to always say measure twice and migrate once. Also engaging your stock stakeholders early to ensure a smooth transition and communicate frequently. Transparent communication builds trust and resistance to change. And we also talked about the team needs to have the support and expertise for a seamless transition. And we heard in our poll that many of you feel like you've never done this before, you're not sure, you don't have the expertise. So this is where you can involve other third parties. Your existing LMS, if it's not easy to export your data, you may have to enlist the help of your vendor to export that. And I have seen that with some of our clients. MapleLMS makes it very easy to export your data, both your learning data and your content, but some legacy systems make it very difficult, and you may have to have them do that portion of it. And they may charge you a fee to get your own data, which I don't believe in, but sometimes that's required. And just want to mention the MapleLMS migration team offers expert guidance and tools to make migration seamless. So we typically offer our clients the support and training to do the migration themselves. Or if you want us to handle everything, we can handle everything for you. You don't have to do it alone. A talented partner will have great expertise and can guide you through the lessons learned on previous migrations and really support you with best practices. And finally, migration is an opportunity to enhance your user experience and operational efficiency. So use migration as a springboard to reimagine how learning is delivered and experienced. So that kind of concludes the main key points. I will just now look to the Q&A to see if we have any questions from the audience. And the first one I see, is it necessary to migrate all your existing content and user data into your new LMS? So, Avin, do you want to make some comments on that?
Yeah, great question. By the way, it's completely optional, and really depends on organization to organization on what their priorities are. Uh, I would say bringing in user data is probably one of the most important items, but definitely your content is important as well. So maybe this could go out in phases too. Maybe you start with existing LMS user data migration, and then maybe bring over content when it's ready to go live. Content migrations are typically easier, I would say. Really involves exporting your existing files and bring them over, or simply upload them into the new system that's supported. But yeah, briefly just to answer this question, it's completely optional. It's not necessary to migrate all of your existing content and user data, but probably some of it, or maybe the most important pieces of it, would really be helpful.
Yeah, that's great. And I'll just add on, some of our clients take this opportunity to kind of get things cleaned up too. So they may not migrate all of their existing content. There may be some courses that are really outdated, and so they take that opportunity to sunset that. For continuity of user experience, I think it's pretty critical to bring over your user data, unless you just announce to whoever your learners are that we're kind of starting fresh. Also, if your legacy LMS is integrated with a different system of records like a CRM or an AMS or an HRIS, you may have some of the key data that you need in there. And if you may feel that it may or may not be necessary to bring over all that existing user data into your new LMS. Um, and then I see another question. How long does does a typical data migration take? And would you like to answer that as well, Avin?
Yeah, well, it again depends on the size of data you have, the amount of data that you're looking to migrate, and and really comes down to what's really needed to be migrated. Because with some organizations there'll be a lot of data residing into their system. Usually it's data worth of years, so maybe 10-year-old data, 20 years old data sometimes. So it also depends on the organization. And also I'll say that sometimes maybe just importing data from some recent batches might be helpful, and might not take much time. But clearly, if you have a huge data set, then that means robust planning, uh, and robust processes, and also including well, not just one but multiple individuals to make this happen.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of dependencies on there, what resources you have available, how much data, and if you're able to map it correctly. I mean, I've seen our team process a large amount of user records into the hundreds of thousands sometimes. And if you map that appropriately and test it first, make sure everything's working, it can be rather seamless, as long as the data is cleaned up. But yeah, that can really vary. But thank you, Avin, for answering that question. If you haven't asked your question just yet, feel free to type in as we finish up here. But I just wanted to thank everyone. We appreciate you attending and your interest in the topic of effective strategies for a new smooth LMS migration and transition. We will also have this webinar posted, the on-demand version, on our webpage within a couple of days. And I think you'll find many other helpful resources on the MapleLMS.com website, including other past webinars that we've hosted. So thanks again for everyone for joining. I hope the information presented today was helpful, and wishing everyone a great day ahead. Feel free to reach out to us if you'd like to connect on this topic or any other future topics, and have a great day.